Greetings everyone, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, here to bring you another episode review from Season 6 of The Loud House. Today's episode is titled The Loathe Boat. First we'll discuss the plot, and then my thoughts and critiques with my final score. So, let's get right into it. In this episode, Lucy and her friends try to sneak their old Morticians Club president Bertrand off his parents' cruise ship before he has to head back out on the water, but their attempts to make sure no one catches him don't go over too well. After failing to convince the passengers the ship was haunted, and finding out his parents are going to extend the length of the cruise, Bertrand reveals he really doesn't want to be on the ship anymore. In the end, his parents decide he can stay with his aunt in Royal Woods, meaning his torment from things such as karaoke is finally over. Well, that concludes the plot of the episode, so now we come to my thoughts and critiques. I guess the first thing to talk about would be the return of a minor character who I really thought would never make a comeback. This episode marks the return of Bertrand, who was last seen looking very pale, and now looking very tan with some very obvious tan lines. This is the first time we've seen and heard from him since the episode A Grave Mistake back in Season 4, and no, I do not count his so-called cameo from the Netflix movie. You see, if the director wants us to believe the film does in fact take place between the end of the 4th season and just before the start of the 5th, then Bertrand should not have been in Royal Woods to partake in the Junior Morticians deathmatch. Maybe this episode takes place at the end of the 4th season and before the movie, referring to my theory how episodes can be rearranged from their original production order so as to make a somewhat consistent in-universe timeline, but I'm not going to spend too much time trying to wrap my head around the film's questionable continuity status in regard to the main series. But speaking of continuity, this episode kept things consistent from what was originally laid out in A Grave Mistake, being that Bertrand was going to be traveling on the SS Fun Times party cruise because his father accepted a job as a lifeguard. We're also introduced to Bertrand's mom, and she too has a job on the ship, that being the head of security. But before I talk more about them, I have to first acknowledge Bertrand's dilemma because at face value, I get it. Seeing how he embraces the goth lifestyle, it's not surprising why he wanted to get off that ship, let alone not wanting to get on in the first place. From disco bingo to toga nights, that's the kind of normie stuff that would drive a goth like him out of his mind. Still, much like his friends from the episode Sand Hassles, he does embrace some normie things like a conga line, so maybe being on that cruise opened the door to new experiences. Regardless of that, it was very clear he didn't want to spend another year on the boat. But like he said previously in Season 4, he couldn't legally separate from his parents and he had no choice but to go with them. Then Lucy asked the most obvious question on why Bertrand didn't just talk to his parents about how he was feeling, to which he replied by saying his parents just don't understand. Insert obvious Will Smith reference here. I take some issue with the parents when they explained why they didn't understand how their son was feeling, but I'll get back to that in just a bit. Anyway, Lucy and her friends tried coming up with different ways of sneaking Bertrand off the ship that was docked at Lake Eddie, and they had to do it before the 24-hour rest period was over. Their attempts included using a pelican to fly him off, taking him out in a casket as if he were a dead passenger, and even propelling him off a slide after oiling him up with sunscreen. Not only did each of their attempts fail, considering it was the same pelican that kept screwing things up, but each attempt ended with Bertrand in the water with his dad coming to rescue him. By the way, how exactly were the kids going to sneak a casket containing a supposedly dead cruise goer past Bertrand's mom if she's the head of security? You really think she's going to ignore something as serious as that coming down the ramp and not ask any questions, let alone having a look inside to see who died on her watch? Then again, the kids were able to board the ship with tickets that were randomly upchucked by a pelican, so I guess nothing is off limits when it comes to conveniently moving the story forward. Also, why would Bertrand be wearing a life preserver in the casket if the club's plan was to just casually walk him off the ship while he was hiding inside? I mean, I highly doubt they planned ahead in the off chance they slipped on some pool water and send the casket flying off the deck. He wasn't even wearing a life preserver when they tried pushing him off the slide, and if it hadn't been for that passing dolphin, he would have been flailing around in the water and posing a bigger risk of drowning. In short, the multiple escape plans were honestly not that good. Plus, why would Lucy say Bertrand's parents were making it hard to sneak him off the ship when those two adults clearly had no idea their son was even gone until he was seen splashing in the water? It's not their fault the pelican screwed things up. So yeah, Lucy was just projecting the missteps of her own getaway plans onto other people for no valid reason whatsoever. However, I will give some minor praise to the kids for trying to scare everyone off the ship by saying it was haunted by the ghost of Lake Eddie. Most of their stunts were hilariously ridiculous, some a bit more than others, and I'll admit Haiku scaring that woman through the bathroom mirror was pretty cool looking. Initially, the kids thought their plan had worked and everyone was going to leave, but everyone on board assumed the kids were just actors and their haunting was just a theater performance. Well, I mean, judging by the mask Persephone was wearing, can you really blame anyone for thinking the whole thing was fake. Either way, it was by that point Bertrand's parents decided to sign up for a 2-year extension for the cruise, and that's when Lucy had to confess to committing sabotage. As if such an act hasn't already been played out a billion times on the show already. Lucy says they only did what they did so they could get Bertrand to come back to the Royal Woods where he would be happier. Somehow his parents couldn't figure out their son wasn't happy because they thought he meant dying inside was a good thing. I don't know about anyone else, but that sounded really messed up. Even though Bertrand says he understood their confusion because he and his friends are a very complex bunch, I have difficulty believing a parent wouldn't start thinking the worst of their child if they outright said they were dying inside. That would be a serious red flag for someone with clinical depression, and yet his parents never thought much of it. Maybe they assumed his goth lifestyle was just a phase and he wasn't serious about the dark stuff he was saying. It's hard to say, and maybe I'm overanalyzing this part of the episode a lot more than I should, but to have these parents play off the notion of their son dying inside as a good thing is never going to sit right with me. I really don't want to say these two are bad parents because their upbeat personalities do make them somewhat likable, but they definitely need to pay a little more attention to their son when he says things like he's dying inside, something you would think any regular parent would be overly concerned about. But anyway, in an effort to make their son happy, they decide to send Bertrand back to Royal Woods to live with his Aunt Madeline. Apparently, Bertrand never realized he had an aunt, and his parents never told him about her because she's a super positive life coach. Okay, that's an explanation, I guess. So in the end, Bertrand and his parents came to terms with how things were going to be moving forward and hugged it out before partaking in one last conga line. It's not every day we see every member of the Morticians Club smiling about something that doesn't involve death, so take that little happy moment while you still can. Overall, on my ranking list at the time of this recording, this episode starring the Morticians Club is their lowest rated episode to date, even lower than that of Haunted House Call. With this being another sabotage-driven story, the goth kids tried to bring their friend back home, and how they went about following through on their plan was not that entertaining or creative. From failing in their mission on 4 separate occasions to having a character's parents assume the idea of dying inside is meant to be a good thing, to resolving the conflict with a sudden revelation about a family member a character conveniently didn't even know was living in their hometown, the final product just comes off as stupid. The only good things to come out of this were the return of Bertrand and the episode sticking to the continuity that was first established in A Grave Mistake. Other than that, and the little scare moment with Haiku, this is just a ridiculously stupid episode, and it's not hard to see why. With that said, I give The Loathe Boat a 5.8 out of 10. Well folks, that concludes my review of The Loathe Boat. Even though I could say this is an episode you could easily pass up on watching, there's actually one thing that technically makes it necessary to watch, and that would be the reintroduction of Bertrand. Since the episode ended with him being allowed to return to the Royal Woods, this pretty much opens the door to him returning to the Morticians Club, which I'm fairly certain is going to happen the next time Lucy and her friends meet up in the cemetery. But here's an important question. Will he be reinstated as club president, or will Lucy continue to lead the club from here on out? As you can see, I don't even count Haiku as co-president, given how she continues to sit with the other kids instead of standing next to Lucy whenever the club is in session, which in hindsight makes that promise those two made at the end of A Grave Mistake seem very hollow. So reply to the pinned comment down below, and let's see who you think will be the one calling future club meetings to order. But anyway, as far as the rest of this episode goes, what did you guys think of it? Love it? Hate it? Something you would add? Change? Keep it as it is? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to this channel for the latest Loud House content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.